Let's take a look at Herald of the Sun. So Herald of the Sun is for Holy and Retribution. When I see the name Herald of the Sun, I think sun, I think light, I think holy, I think um just devastating your enemies with holy damage or something along those lines. That's sort of what I think when I see the name. Fantastic name. Um Heralds of the Sun infuse themselves with radiant solar energy to inflict burns. Keyword here is radiant, so it looks like we're going to be doing radiant damage with it, which I believe is holy and fire combined, kind of like Wake of Ashes. Um, Radiant solar energy to inflict burns on enemies and cauterize their allies' wounds, so healing and damage. They are deeply bonded to this power, and it can manifest potent solar rays while fully connected to light. Sure. So the main ability, not the capstone, but the main ability, it seems to be that all of these trees have a common theme. It's sort of you get like one sort of main passive or active ability, and then you get like a capstone at the end that like amplifies it or something along those lines. At least that's what it seems. Um, so Sunspot. I'm gonna focus on the ret side of things. Could go over to Holy too, but I'm gonna focus just on the ret. So Sunspot. Wake of Ashes causes your next 2 holy power spending abilities to create a sunspot on your target. Okay. So Wake of Ashes is a 30-second cooldown. Um, and it's sort of just like boom boom, right? So it's gonna be Wake of Ashes, Holy Power Spender, Gainer, Holy Power Spender, right? So it's gonna be, you know, 1 second after and 3 seconds after, something like that. To create a sunspot on your target, dealing radiant damage or healing over 8 seconds. So technically, you could also like Word of Glory someone, and that will also trigger a sunspot. But ideally, you don't want to be using Word of Glory right after Wake of Ashes, probably. Okay. Every other one of these will be with wings, right? So it's going to be, you'll trigger this once without wings and once with wings, I suppose, right? Something like that. Um, I guess. Okay. Both specializations. 10% of Sunspot's damage and healing radiates to nearby allies or enemies reduced beyond 5 targets. I really don't like the constant reduced beyond 5 targets, but whatever. So it does square root damage after 5. Um, okay. So there's a single target component of some random amount of additional radiant damage. Um, Immediate question is, it says the next 2 holy power spending abilities create a sunspot on your target. It doesn't say targets, it says target. But Divine Storm is an AoE. So is it the thing you're targeting? Is it a random one? I got a lot of questions on how that's going to function. Um, is it always going to be like a singular sunspot, or could one of your spenders, like your Divine Storm, put it on multiple? I don't know. And it says 10% of sunspot damage and healing radiates to nearby allies or enemies. Okay, sure. Let's go down the left path here. It looks like you have a choice option. So every 5 seconds, your next sunspot's damage or healing is increased by 5%, stacking up to 10 times. Okay. Um, is that just like a passive that stays stacked up, or once you use it, are the stacks removed? I don't know. It says it stacks twice as fast while out of combat. Um, that sort of leads me to think that it probably works the same exact way that talent you never take for Divine Storm works, where it stacks up and then you spend it. Um, the way this reads to me is you're just always going to have like a maxed sunspot stacked damage every time you use it for one of the two. I don't know. Seems interesting. Again, it's really going to depend on tuning. Or while Sunspot is active, your Holy Power spenders deal 10% increased additional damage, which is essentially to say, that essentially reads the next like 10 to 12 seconds after your Wake of Ashes, your spenders deal 10% more damage. That's sort of what it reads to me. Sure. This is essentially a repurposed old Templar's talent for all intents and purposes. Back from BFA or something, where like using Templar's Verdict would increase your Templar Verdict damage or whatever it was. Alright, second choice in this side. So far, not anything super impressive, it's whatever. Sunspots reduce, you have like a utility thing here. You can either reduce the movement of enemies and increase movement of allies. Okay, the interesting thing here is it says allies, so potentially you could increase multiple people's speed by 20%. However, given that everything seems to be tied to Wake of Ashes, it's not going to be on demand per se. Wake of Ashes is too big and too important of a cooldown, especially if it's having all these additional abilities linked to it, that you're never going to hold Wake of Ashes. You're always going to send it on cooldown. So this is not something that you're ever going to want to hold and be like, okay, we need 20% movement speed now. So I see that as sort of like a conflicting design in a sense, but okay. Movement and speed increased by 5% while above 80%. When you're brought low, you get 40% bonus movement speed for 5 seconds. Okay, I mean, some movement speed is nice, but it doesn't seem game-changing. Can only occur once a minute. Yeah, it's whatever. I'm not super thrilled. Okay. Aurora Retribution. After you cast Wake of Ashes, gain Divine Purpose. Okay. So when you cast Wake, you get a free spender. So Aurora is also contradictory to Gleaming Rays. Why? Because you sort of, so it's saying while your sunspots are active, your Holy Power spenders deal 10% increase additional damage. You only get the sunspots after the next 2 Holy Power spenders, right? And this sort of promotes you using 2 spenders, like literally the 2 GCDs back to each other, like back to back, right? So it'll be Wake of Ashes, you get a Divine Purpose proc. So you're going to have at least 3 Holy Power, probably 4 or 5, right? You're going to use a Holy Power spender. You're not going to use any Holy Power. You're still at 4 or 5, so you're going to have to use another one, otherwise you're wasting. So this is just promoting you using them back to back, which is bad because you ideally want to be spacing them out. You probably want to do like from 0 you use Wake and then gainer then spender to get like, an extra 2 or 3 seconds of 10% increased damage. I don't know. I don't like this left side. I think the Sunspot is interesting. I don't like the left side because A, it seems weak, and B, the abilities contradict each other, right? They contradict what you actually want to do. You have an ability here that's essentially saying, you have a passive ability that's just whatever, it just depends on tuning. And then you have like a controllable passive ability that essentially says you want to try and min-max your uptime on sunspots. But then you have another ability that's essentially saying, hey, we're just going to make sure that your uptime on sunspots is bad. So like, Alright. Middle path. Eternal Flame replaces Word of Glory. Okay, interesting. So you will have an ability called Eternal Flame that replaces Word of Glory, costs 3 Holy Power. So it's essentially an upgraded version of Word of Glory. Heals an ally immediately and over an additional 20 seconds. Oh wow, that's a really long time. Okay. And then healing increased by 20% when cast, or sorry, 25% when cast on self. Interesting. Interesting. Hybrid Paladin question mark? Maybe? Um, Interesting. I mean, maybe. This seems pretty strong. Obviously, it depends on the numbers, but Word of Glory is or at least as Retribution Paladin, Word of Glory is already a very powerful heal. Um, if you're increasing that heal on yourself by 25%, I mean that's already overkill, but that essentially guarantees that Word of Glory is going to top you. And then depending on how strong that overtime effect is, um, you can very easily see. So Paladin isn't exactly weak against rot damage, but this would probably make us one of the tankiest classes in the game, specifically dealing with rot damage. Like, we are already one of the tankiest classes in the game, so I'm fully expecting them to really not give us many defensive tools in these trees. But this one's interesting, because this is not per se a defensive tool, this is more just more HPS. This is rot protection. This is what it is. Now, if you're playing with good people and you're a good DPS, ideally you aren't pressing Word of Glory much ever, right? But you will use it occasionally. And more importantly, you also have the auto Word of Glory ability, right? So once every minute, if you get low, below 25 or 35% health, whatever it is, it's a talent, then you auto cast Word of Glory on yourself. And in this case, I'm guessing instead of Word of Glory, you would cast Eternal Flame on yourself. And they reduced the power on that ability. It used to be just a full Word of Glory. Now it's like a 60% effective Word of Glory. But this would effectively bring it back to full power, and then also give you this like interesting heal over 20 seconds. Again, it really depends on tuning and how strong that heal is, but it's interesting. The concept of having like a pseudo leech type of ability that is just, permanently keeping you topped even against rot damage could be interesting. But also, it could just be, in today's terms, it could just be like 1 or 2k. It could just be ticking for a couple thousand every 2 or 3 seconds, and it essentially does nothing, right? We don't know. It really depends on tuning. All right, ad is over. I hate ads. All right, so Eternal Flame could be interesting, maybe. I don't know. Choice node. Sunspot's duration is increased by 2 seconds, and Eternal Flame's duration is increased by 3 seconds. Okay, so instead of Sunspot lasting 8 seconds, it lasts 10. And instead of a 23-second heal over time, 20, it's a 23-second. Sure. And then the other option is Lingering Radiance. So, Sunspots leave an Eternal Flame for 12 seconds. Oh, there we go. Much better. Can I make this a little smaller? Yeah. Sunspots leave an Eternal Flame for 12 seconds on allies. Okay. Or, oh, that's interesting. Sunspots leave an Eternal Flame. So is that like a second Holy Shock for Holy? That seems really strong for Holy. I don't know about Ret. Sunspots leave or a Greater Judgment on enemies when they expire or extended. But Greater Judgment just isn't that important. And it's good. Chances are it's going to come at inopportune times, right? Like, Greater Judgment doesn't stack. So there's easily a chance that it's just going to not matter. And it's only when they expire or are oh, wait, it says it can extend. Does that mean that even though it lasts 8 seconds, it could go up to like 15 if you do 2 in a row? Is that... Because that wasn't made obvious from the initial description. But if that's the case, that's much more interesting. Okay. Either way, I'm still not a huge... It doesn't seem all that impactful. I'd probably go with the duration increasing one. Either way. Okay. Your Solar Grace, your haste is increased by 4% for 12 seconds each time you apply a Sunspot. Multiple stacks may overlap. Okay, so it's essentially just 8% haste for 12 seconds after using Wake. That's all. That's literally all it is. Because you're never gonna get more, at least so far, right? Because it's just after you use Wake. Wake is a 30-second cooldown. 2 holy power spending abilities. That's it, right? So you get 8% haste for 12 seconds. But it overlaps, so it's really like 4% for like 2 seconds, and then like 8% for like 10 seconds or something like that. Okay. Looking at the right side. So far, left side seems kind of meh. Mid is interesting, but seems okay. I wouldn't say meh, I would say okay. Alright, right side. Luminosity for Retribution. Critical strike chance of Hammer of Wrath and Divine Storm increased by 10%. Okay, so I like the Divine Storm crit and chance increased by 10%. That's interesting. Not really a fan of the crit chance increase on Hammer of Wrath though, because we already have a 100% chance to crit Hammer of Wrath. Does Blizzard not remember like the talents they make? Like we have this talent, we all hate it. Maybe this means they're gonna get rid of that talent. But we have a talent currently that makes our Hammer of Wrath a 100% chance to crit. Maybe they forgot. I don't know. Okay. So 10% chance on Divine Storm. Interesting, I guess. Sunseer. Hammer of Wrath and Divine Storm critical strikes cause the target to burn for additional radiant damage over 4 seconds. Could be strong. Don't know. And again, it says the target. And I don't understand this. So it specifically mentions Divine Storm critical strikes, and then it says the target. Is that one target, or is that like all the targets Divine Storm hits? I don't know. And again, like it seems like this will happen a lot, right? Because Hammer of Wrath always crits, and you know if you're hitting a bunch of people with Divine Storm, there's going to be at least a crit. So it seems like it'll probably be a large damage component, like pretty good, right? Considering you will always, when you use one of these abilities, you will always trigger this essentially, right? Like always. Okay. I haven't even read the third ability, but so far, you know, unless there's some crazy tuning, the right side is already stronger than the other two. Maybe even the other two combined. And then the last one here, Hammer of Wrath and Divine Storm have a 15% chance to cast again at 30% effectiveness. That's just good. 30% effectiveness is nice. Divine Storm especially is very nice because, you know, that means you could potentially get your 4 Divine Storms like you do currently. Seems good. So far I would say left side is meh. Mid seems okay. Right side seems strong. I like the right side. Now the Capstone. Sun's Avatar. During Avenging Wrath, okay, so every other, again, Wake of Ashes is 30 seconds, Avenging Wrath is 1 minute, right? So every other. During Avenging Wrath, you become linked to your sunspots, so those 2 sunspots you can make, causing radiant damage to enemies or healing the allies that pass through the beams. Okay, so I'm guessing. Interesting. Hmm. Okay, so I guess between you, so there's going to be a space on the field between your target and you, and there's going to be, I guess, a laser grid, right? A laser beam grid, something. And when enemies pass through that grid, they take damage. And when allies pass through that grid, they get healed. That sort of seems like what it is. Okay. Come linked to your sunspots, dealing radiant damage to enemies or healing allies that pass through. the beams, or maybe the beams move. I don't know. And then it says reduce beyond 5 targets, so clearly it could hit AoE. Okay. Second part. Activating Avenging Wrath. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. Activating Avenging Wrath applies 4 sunspots onto nearby allies or enemies and increases sunspots' damage and healing by 20%. Okay. So outside of wings, you're gonna have 2 sunspots for 8 seconds, I guess. Well, 10 seconds, I guess, if you go the mid path. 8 to 10 seconds, you'll have 2 sunspots. However, when you're in wings, for 8 to 10 seconds, you'll have 6 sunspots. Okay. Seems interesting. Seems cool, seems interesting. I imagine it's going to do a good bit of damage. Maybe. It really depends on tuning. Honestly, it's too early to tell. The concept is interesting. I don't like the concept of the final node though, because you're a melee class, right? Well, you're melee +3. So let's say you play perfectly and you play at melee +3. That grid is going to be exceptionally small, right? You're talking about essentially on top of the target. So you're going to have to like target the furthest mob from you that's still in melee, still in your melee range, which is really hard to tell sometimes in stacked nameplates. And then hope that like they're all sort of jittering around in your beams when you have wings. It just feels weird. Sun's avatar, what it seems like to me, Sun's avatar should just be Light's Decree. Just change it to Light's Decree. Like why are you doing this whole like laser grid beam nonsense? Just change it to Light's Decree. Make the damage radiate out from yourself, or make it radiate out from the target. Don't make some weird like grid where you have to figure out if mobs are between like a mob and yours. No, don't do that. Just radiate it out from the mob itself or from you. Think Light's Decree. That would be better. Otherwise, it seems interesting. Okay. It's interesting. Definitely is somewhat thematic, I guess. It's interesting. I think it needs a little bit more cooking, especially the capstone. I think the capstone could use a little more cooking with that whole laser grid concept, but I have a couple of questions on how some of the mechanics work, but it's interesting. All right, Templar. Templar stops at nothing to fulfill their divine purpose of bringing justice and purging the wicked. They call down hammers. Okay, hammer time, I guess. They call down hammers of light and unleash devastating combinations of physical and holy attacks that vanquish their enemies. Okay. So, while Herald of the Sun seemed to focus on radiant damage and beams of light, I guess, Templar seems to be focusing on holy strike damage or at least, well, it says physical and holy, so I'm assuming holy strike, and just hammers everywhere. Okay. Main ability, let's see. Light's Guidance. Retribution. Wake of Acid. Oh, Jesus. Wake of Ashes is replaced with Hammer of Light. Okay, that's an epic sounding ability. Hammer of Light for 12 seconds after it is cast. Oh, a replacement ability. Okay. Interesting. So I guess kind of like how there's a 2-part version of Templar Strike. There's like a Wake of Ashes is almost like a 2-part, except it lasts for a fixed amount of time, 12 seconds. Okay, so Wake of Ashes is replaced with Hammer of Light for 12 seconds after it's cast. Hammer of Light. Hammer down your enemy with the power of the light, dealing holy damage to the target and up to 4 nearby enemies. It doesn't say something really important. It does not say at reduced damage. It just says and up to 4 nearby enemies. We'll have to check that out, but that's interesting. So Okay. Kind of sounds like Divine Storm almost, except it's exactly 5 targets. We'll see. Um, so dealing holy damage, not holy strike, it says holy damage to the target and up to 4 nearby enemies. Additionally, calls down Empyrean hammers from the sky. Jesus Christ. Okay, so literally hammer time from the sky. Additionally, calls down Empyrean hammers from the sky to strike 3 nearby enemies for holy damage. Okay. So you use Wake and oh Jesus, costs 5 holy power. That's an important one at the end. Costs 5 holy, Jesus. Okay. So Wake of Ashes turns from a gainer to a spender, and when it's a spender, it only lasts for 12 seconds, and it's a 5 cost holy power spender, which is essentially unheard of. It has to do ridiculous damage, I would assume. It's 5 holy power, right? Dealing holy damage to the target and up to 4 nearby enemies. I wonder, does that mean all the damage could be funneled into one target? I don't know. Additionally, calls down Empyrean hammers to strike 3 nearby enemies. Again, can all 3 of those strikes be funneled into one enemy? I have questions. No answers. Seems extremely interesting. So far, it's, it turns from a gainer to a spender, costs 5, probably does immense amount of damage because it's a 5, and then just fucking hammer time. Okay, interesting. Let's start with the left side. We're going to do the same thing again. We're going to go left, middle, right, and then read the capstone. Templar's Watch for Retribution. Hammer of Light. Okay, so that's the main ability that it turns into. Hammer of Light and Wake of Ashes. Okay. Wait, so Hammer of Light and Wake of Ashes deal 30% increased damage. That's a lot. When striking only one enemy. Oh, interesting. So single target. This amount is reduced by 6% for each additional target struck. So it seems like an extremely single target or 2 target focused ability. However, it seems like I wonder if there's a bottom, right? So like what happens if you have this ability, but then your Wake of Ashes strikes like 20 targets? Does it do like literally no damage? That would be interesting. It says reduces by 6% for each additional. Oh wait, no, for each additional. No, yeah. Wait, so if you if you take this ability and it hits 2 targets, you're still doing 20%, 24% more damage to each, right? So technically, this ability is actually like most optimal at like 3 targets or something. But yeah, so it's a large increase for like 1 target, 2 target, and 3 target for Wake of Ashes and Hammer of Light. Okay, it's very interesting. The amount of damage this talent does it seems very high, like very, very high. But again, questions on how the mechanic works. Choice node, other option. For whom the bell tolls. Okay, we're really leaning into this judgment theme, like judgment and hammers. Divine Toll, that's your 1 minute cooldown, grants up to 100% increased damage to your next 3 judgments when striking only one enemy. Again, a very high focus on single target. When only striking one enemy. This amount is reduced by 20% for each additional. So similar to this one. Interesting. So, huh. Okay, so it's additional damage. It does feel like the first option probably will do more damage than the second, but they're both interesting. Okay. Second one on the left. Sacrosanct Crusade, if I'm reading that correctly. Yes, Sacrosanct Crusade. Retribution. When you cast Wake of Ashes Gain Shield of Vengeance at 10% effectiveness. Seems kind of poopy. Okay. Um, in current terms, Shield of Vengeance is about a 4 to 500k shield. You have about a million health these days. It's a 4 to 5% shield. So once every 30 seconds, you gain a 40 to 50,000 HP shield. That is terrible. Or more specifically, a 4 to 5% of your health shield. And I guess it'll last 10 seconds probably, right? That seems terrible. Blizzard, that needs to be recooked. That's just really bad. I'm sorry. Um, you just went from an amazing, interesting choice node that seems powerful to just like absolute poop. Okay. Third one. Again, a choice node. Um, Endless Wrath. Option one. Calling down an Empyrean Hammer. So that is Hammer of Light. When you cast Hammer of Light, you additionally call down Empyrean Hammers from the sky to strike three nearby enemies. Okay. So calling down an Empyrean Hammer. So I guess so you have three chances here. Calling down an Empyrean Hammer has a 10% chance to reset the cooldown of Hammer of Wrath and make it usable on any target, regardless of their health. Okay. So similar to Final Verdict, this is literally just like another Final Verdict effect. Um, sure. So just another way to use Hammer of Wrath more often. Okay. Seems like it'll happen a good bit though, right? Like, if you're calling down 3 Empyrean Hammers, then you get 3 10% chances. Interesting, I guess. Maybe it'll help a little bit with the holy power situation. But the thing is, it the 12 seconds after using Wake of Ashes is not the time when you're going to be most struggling for holy power. It's going to be sort of the other 18 seconds, especially when you're out of wings. But okay. Might need a little more cooking on it, but so far it seems interesting. And then Sanctification. Casting Judgment increases the damage of Empyrean Hammer by 10% for 10 seconds. Multiple applications may overlap. Okay. Interesting. So at any given time, you're going to have at least like 2 or 3 stacks of this. So it essentially reads Empyrean Hammer deals like 20 to 30% more damage always, sort of. Interesting. Again, depends on tuning. Okay. It's interesting. Very single target focused on the left side, or at least so it seems. A little bit of ability to do additional damage on like 2 and 3 target as well. It's interesting. Let's look at the middle. Shake the Heavens. What a name. After casting Hammer of Light, you call down an Empyrean Hammer on a nearby target every 2 seconds for 8 seconds. Okay. So you cast the Hammer of Light. It does its big damage. It calls down an additional 3 Empyrean Hammers from the sky. And then additionally on top of that, you call down another Hammer of Light every 2 seconds for 8 seconds. So one cast of Hammer of Light calls down 7 Empyrean Hammers. Jesus. Okay. Interesting. Again, big questions on tuning and stuff, but concept is interesting at least. Retribution. Crusader Strike, Hammer of Wrath, and Blade of Justice, so everything except for Judgment, essentially, extends the duration of Shake the Heavens by 1 second. How many of these can you use in that time? 5, 7, 8? this essentially says this might last for 16 seconds. Interesting. Again, many questions on tuning and things of that nature, but especially if you're running like a CSAA type of build, you're shitting out a Crusader strike every 2 seconds or so. So that would be 4. Probably 1 Hammer of Wrath in there, 5. 2 Blade of Justices at least, 7. So you're already at 15 seconds. Add another couple Crusaders. You sort of get where I'm getting at this, right? This is going to extend... It's going to extend it from 8 seconds to like probably 15 to 20 seconds on average, maybe more. Like, okay. Very interesting. Essentially, the way this reads to me is if you go this middle path, again, it really depends on how strong this Hammer of Light is, or sorry, the Empyrean Hammer is, but it essentially seems like you cast this once and you're just gonna have just shake the heavens for the next, like, 15 to 20 seconds, maybe even longer. It seems really good. Don't know how much damage it does, but it seems very good. Okay. How many of these points are you getting again? You get 10 points, right? So like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. No, it's 11. You don't get all of these, do you? Do you get all of these? Or do you go like one path? How many points do you fill out in a tree? Do you get 10 points for this? Do you get like the majority of the tree? Or do you like sort of go one path? I assume it's sort of one path, but okay. Seems very interesting, pretty strong for sure. We're not even done yet. Hammerfall, Retribution, Templar's Verdict, and Divine Storm call down an Empyrean Hammer on a nearby enemy. Yeah. While Shake the Heavens is active, this effect calls down an additional Empyrean Hammer. Okay. Just shit out hammers constantly. Okay, I like the theme. So you use Wake of Ashes, you use Hammer of Light. Again, don't know exactly how much damage it does, but it's all about getting all these passives rolling. And then you just continue doing your rotation. You're just shitting out these Empyrean Hammers just constantly. Just constant shitting them out everywhere. With the exception of Judgment for some reason. All of your gainers essentially shit out additional, what's it called? Additional, Empyrean Hammers. And then also your spenders also shit out additional Empyrean Hammers. And if you have the Shake the Heavens, which, as I just said, seems like it'll be at least 15 or 20 seconds long, probably at least 15, you send out 2. So, just, on average, you're going to be probably shitting out like 2 of these, 1 to 2, probably 1 a second. 1 to 2 a second of these. Just, they're everywhere, right? Oh, this is interesting. So this leads to the question, optimal play. So it's saying that your Templar Verdict and Divine Storm create these hammers, specifically 2 of them, versus you would get, I guess, 3. I guess it's going to depend. If you go this middle path, it's going to depend on tuning, right? So in AoE versus 5 target versus AoE situations, would it be the case where you want to Hammer of Light, then go back to Templar's Verdict and Divine Storm, and then at the very end of the 12 seconds you want to send out one more Hammer of Light? Or would it be you're just spamming Hammer of Light? I don't know. Again, depends on tuning, but I see a lot of interesting gameplays here. Uh, this feels well baked, and I like this. I like everything I have read about this middle path. I like it. It is mostly passive, but there's an active component of you controlling the passive, which I like. This is a good gameplay loop. To me, out of the 5 sort of left, middle, right trees I've read so far, this one feels the most baked, and it feels interesting. Seems like it could also be pretty powerful, but I like the sound of it. It sounds interesting, it sounds thematic, etc., etc. Okay, right side. This is obviously misspelled, but this is supposed to be Empyrean Hammer. When Empyrean Hammer critically strikes, so again, you have to remember, you probably, unless you can hit multiple sides of this tree, sort of assuming you won't have the constant shitting of it. When Empyrean Hammer critically strikes, 60% of its damage is dealt to nearby enemies. Again, depends on how strong it is. Enemies hit by this effect deal 5% reduced damage to you for 8 seconds. That's also interesting. A little bit DR. That's definitely interesting. Anytime you see DR, it can be strong. It can be very strong sometimes. The middle path seems like it could be some sort of weaving of your 3 and 5 or 4 and 5 holy power abilities. While it seems like if you go this right side, you're definitely going to be spamming Hammer of Light. So it seems. Because you're going to want this cleave, perhaps. I don't know. Also, notice it says just 60% of its damage to nearby enemies. It doesn't say reduced. So maybe some sort of AoE component here. Who knows? Bonds of Fellowship. Option. Choice node. First one. Bonds of Fellowship. You receive 20% less damage from Blessing of Sacrifice. Okay. And each time its target takes damage, you gain 4% movement speed up to a maximum of 40. It seems useless. Whatever. Unrelenting Charger, other option. Divine Steed lasts 2 seconds longer. So instead of like a 6-second, you could have an 8-second long Divine Steed, just forever Divine Steed, and increases your movement speed by an additional 30% for the first 3 seconds. Okay, so just even faster Charger. That was already fast, and really, really, really long Chargers. Okay. Sure. And then, so this is essentially just a dead node. And then last node on the right side. Undisputed Ruling. Hammer of Light applies judgment to its targets, and increasing your haste by 15% for. Oh, whoa. Okay. Hammer of Light applies judgment to its targets. I don't. Oh, that's right. It is a spender. But I don't see how that's going to matter, because the fact that it costs the fact that it costs 5 holy power means you're going to probably judgment between each time. So I'm not sure how important applying the judgment is, but the second part is definitely powerful. Increases your haste by 15% for 6 seconds. So you get like drums. So if you spam the Hammer of Light, or if you time it well, if you use it once every 6 seconds, and like you use one like right before the ability expires, you can get about 16 to 17 seconds. That's really strong. You can get about 16 to 17 seconds of 15% haste. This is an extremely powerful node. Interesting. Okay. So the way I read it is the left side is dead in the water. the first ability seems very interesting, having Hammer of Light and Wake of Ashes deal 30% more damage, but the rest is dead. There's amazing seeming synergy in the middle, and then the right just has this nuclear of a node down here. It's probably going to be between the middle and the right. Seems interesting. Let's read the last. So we haven't even read the capstone. So the capstone, Light's Deliverance. You gain a stack of Light's Deliverance when you call down an Empyrean Hammer. Okay. So when you're dealing with the left side and the right side, you're only going to have so many Empyrean Hammers, right? You get three Empyrean Hammers every time you cast Hammer of Light, essentially. If you go to left or to right side. So maybe you cast like 3 times or something. So it seems, because it seems like you're going to be spamming it, at least. You'll get like 9 hammers or so every 30 seconds. 18. Okay, so once every 3, so this reads once every 3 minutes if you go the left or the right side. Once every 3 minutes. So you gain a stack of Light's Deliverance when you call down an Empyrean Hammer. At 50 stacks, so like once every 3 minutes or so, casting Hammer of Light empowers you for 12 seconds to cast Hammer of Light in additional time for free. So you just get 5 holy power for free. You get 1 additional cast. Okay. Seems kind of lackluster, to be honest. I mean, it's interesting, but like also lackluster. You get an additional free Hammer of Light. Okay. Now, but that's for the left and right side. If you go the middle, which again, I was saying, it seems like every second you're going to be shitting out a Hammer of Light, and that's even if you don't use Hammer of Light. So let's think about this. So if you go the middle path, you're going to use it once to start, and then you're probably going to use it once at the end, almost guaranteed, and you're going to make that 15-second extension. You're essentially going to always have... You're going to have like essentially 100% uptime on shitting out a Empyrean Hammer, and you're going to be shitting them out at a rate of like 1 a second-ish. So while... Okay, this is how it reads. It reads to me while once every 3 minutes on the left or right side, you'll get Light's Deliverance. If you go down the middle, it's probably once a minute. That's sort of what it reads to me. So it's definitely way more powerful if you go down the middle. Again, I'm not 100% sure how many of these talents do you take. Does anyone know? Like, how many talent points are you getting? Do you get 5? Do you essentially go down one of these paths? Do you get 5 points, or do you get like 10? Do you essentially get like everything here but like 1 or 2? Either way, it's very interesting for sure. So yeah, so that's sort of my take on what this looks like. I guess we'll have to see. We have to wait until we get tuning, I guess. Definitely seems interesting though. Yeah, if we go here, you can see the choices and stuff. It definitely seems interesting. Both of them are definitely interesting, no question about it. But I guess we'll see.